12 verses there, and what I wanted was a contrast from what we did last week. Last week we talked about the importance of wisdom. We talked about how to get wisdom. We also talked about the differences between the two types of wisdom. Anybody remember what the two types of wisdom are?
Heavenly and earthly?
Yeah, there's heavenly wisdom and earthly wisdom. How about some, just give me some, a way to describe each of those if you could. How would you describe earthly wisdom?
Earthly wisdom cannot see what's beyond our face.
Okay, good. Now it's James says that that's earthly and sensual, right? All right. In contrast, what would heavenly wisdom be like? Remember, it's first pure, then peaceable, and all those things, right? So the contrast between earthly wisdom and heavenly wisdom. I'm sitting here so you guys can help me out. My voice is in. So those are the two differences between the two types of wisdom, right? That we talked about. And what would be another word for earthly wisdom? We're about to look at it in Proverbs if you need a hand.
Knowledge.
No.
Worldly.
Earthly wisdom.
Pride. Pride. Vanity.
Okay, those are all descriptive words. How about foolishness? Right?
Indeed.
How about foolishness? So another word, or a word that's not so much descriptive as it is the very definition of earthly wisdom, is foolishness. And so I wanted to look in contrast in Proverbs chapter 26 at what it's like on the other side. Not to say that any of us have to learn what foolishness is like, because all of us have been on that end. All of us have been fools. All of us have been fooled, right? So it's not only something that we can do unto others, but it's also something we've had done unto us. We have been foolish, and that has harmed others around us. We've been foolish and it's harmed ourselves. We've been foolish and it's harmed our relationship with God. But not only that, we've been on the other end where we've also been fooled, and we've been harmed by the foolishness of others. One thing to keep in mind as we talk about these things: have you ever been fooled by God? Have you ever been on the end where God has done something that was foolish and you had to suffer the consequences? It's never happened, has it? Isn't that amazing? I know that's a simple thought, but it's one that we need to bring to our minds so that we can understand who God is and what He's trying to accomplish on our behalf. Okay? When He talks about the difference between earthly and heavenly wisdom, that it's pure and peaceable and all those things, that He has our best interest in heart, and there'll never be a time when we'll have to deal with something goofy that God did. Right?
Right.
So, Proverbs 26, let's read that together. Looks like there's 12 verses there, so someone take the first 3, and then so on and so forth until we get to 12.
As snow in summer and as rain in harvest, so honor is not seemly for a fool. As the bird by wandering, as the swallow by flying, so the curse causeless shall not come. A whip for the horse, a bridle for the ass, and a rod for the fool's back.
Do not answer a fool according to his folly, lest you also be like him. Answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own eyes. He who sends a message by the hand of a fool cuts off his own feet and drinks violence.
The words of the lame are not equal, so is a parable in the mouth of fools. As he that bindeth a stone in a sling, so is he that giveth honor to a fool. As a thorn goeth up into the hand of a drunkard, so is a parable in the mouth of fools. The great God that formed all things both rewardeth the fool and rewardeth transgressors. As a dog returns to his vomit, so a fool returns to his folly. Seest thou a man wise in his own conceit? There is more hope of a fool than of him.
Okay. That last verse there is kind of the theme of what we're talking about. See a man that is wise in his own conceit. All of us have that issue, but when in looking at a man, has that, the characteristics of such an individual are what he's just talked about in the first 11 verses. And all of the harm that will befall that person. There's more hope for a fool than of that person. What does that mean? That fools aren't that way?
They're not conceited about it.
Possibly.
A fool
Yeah.
wouldn't have knowledge, right?
Right.
But,
I want to, right, go ahead.
but this man has knowledge. But he's using it in the wrong way and allowing it to turn into pride.
Well, I think the fool definitely has knowledge.
Okay.
And that's one thing I wanted to get past, or for us to understand, is just because it's called a fool, it's not as if he's ignorant. Okay, and I think he's a fool because he's not ignorant. The reason he's a fool is because he knows better, right? He knows better, and he has not applied it. Because when you know better and you apply it, what's that called? Accountability, right? But that's my definition for wisdom, if you remember from last week. That when you know better, you have the knowledge, then applying it says, oh, that's a wise individual. That's a wise person. Knowledge and wisdom are not the same thing. Because knowledge can turn into foolishness when it's not applied, and when it's not minded. So there's the difference. It's not the case that this fool doesn't know what he's doing, or that the fool has no idea what's going on. It's that he does know, and he spurns it. He decides that he's not going to follow that.
Well, Paul says he's a fool for Christ. And so you can be, it's more pointing towards something, an ideology. Not like you can be a fool for Jesus Christ.
Well, Paul was a
And
fool
be-
for Christ in the eyes of someone who was foolish. Not really. Not in actuality, he wasn't a fool for Christ. Paul was a fool to those people who were looking at him as foolish. That the gospel was foolish. He would say, to those people, he was a fool. He says, you know what, I'll be a fool for Christ's sake. That's fine in your eyes. But in all actuality, he wasn't a fool. Because a fool is someone who doesn't apply what he knows. He has knowledge, but then doesn't apply it. Now, definitely wouldn't have, well, at times, I guess Paul would have done that since he's human like all of us are, but
But in this context too, I think Paul's talking about his giving himself completely over.
mhm.
He was giving himself, he would be anything for Jesus Christ.
Sure.
It doesn't matter, he'll be a fool to the world, he'll be a fool
Yep.
to thing, but in the context, Paul says he's given it over. In the context that we see here, the fool has done the same thing. He's given himself over to something that won't redeem him, won't
Right.
bring him up.
That's exactly right. He's decided to go away. He's decided to go in the opposite direction of wisdom, and the opposite direction in the knowledge that he gained. Obviously, the writer in Proverbs here, which is Solomon, he says to get knowledge, right? Chase after it, find it, look for it, get knowledge and get wisdom. Get, what's the other word? The U word.
Understanding.
Get understanding, right? So all of those things have to do with not just head knowledge and gathering of facts, right? All of those things have more to do with application. And incidentally, before we get more into the text, it's one of the things that I think has happened with the church and where I think we've gone wrong in Bible classes, because we've patterned our Bible classes and a lot of the things that we do after the educational system of the United States of America. And that is, we learn lists. You ever notice that? We say, okay, I need you to know all the capitals of the states. What good does that do me in everyday life? I may be able to quote the capitals of each state, but we're learning lists instead of concepts. And when you don't learn concepts, then you have no way to apply anything. And then in Sunday schools, we end up doing the same thing. What are the name of the apostles? And how many children in the church over the last 30 years have fallen away, having the ability to name all the books of the New Testament and all the names of the apostles and all the books of the Bible, and they've fallen away with a head knowledge, and they have not known how to. Okay, you have the knowledge. Proverbs does say that, but to get wisdom and then understanding. To get wisdom and then understanding. The eunuch, he had knowledge, right? But then he was asked, "Do you know what you're understand what you're reading. Makes a big difference, doesn't it? So, the difference between someone who is wise and someone who is a fool, I think is, to human beings, there may be a fine line in some places, but to God, I think it's very clear between the two. It says, as the snow in the summer and rain in the harvest, so honor is not seemly for a fool. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. When you get snow in the summer, it would be not fitting, right? You wouldn't like that. I remember 2 years ago, I had several wheat fields in the spring that I was scouting, and it snowed in May.
Significantly.
And it didn't do those wheat fields very good, right? It actually did not help them at all, and it was detrimental to them. If you get snow in the middle of summer, it's not going to do a lot of good for the vegetables that you have growing and for that time of season. To honor a fool, which we do so often with our not just our politicians, but the people, some of the people that are in churches and in leadership positions. I can think of one guy, and his initials are Joel Osteen, that we honor, that people honor, and it's such a detriment to society. And his wife, I think we watched a short YouTube thing of her telling the church what was best for them, and it was just absolutely mind-boggling and awful. And it's a detriment, and we give honor to these people, and it's out of place. And not only is it out of place, it's a detriment to society, and it's a detriment to the individual. So we have to be careful. The Bible says give honor where honor is due, right? But it's not due there. As a bird by wandering, and as a swallow by flying, so the curse causeless shall not come. You know, it's, in my understanding of this particular verse, the fool thinks that he can talk and treat other people however he wants. Talk to and treat other people however he wants or she wants. He can do whatever he wants. He believes that he has rights, right? But you know, when he spiels out his nonsense, his verbiage, it's not going to harm the hearer as much as it's going to harm him. Bird will fly over your head, and you may not even know it. How many birds have flown over your head in the middle of in your lifetime, and you not even know that they flew, right? They're coming and going, and you have no idea. You don't take notice of it, right? They're coming and going, and you have no idea what they're doing. Neither do you care. So a lot of times these fools, they think their words are weighty, don't they? A fool really thinks that their words, they have meaning, and they have a lot of weight, and you better listen to what I say. But most of the time, they have no weight, they have no meaning. But it does always, I think the Proverbs writer is trying to say here, the curse causeless, it shall not come. It's going to come back to bite him. It's going to come back on the fool, on the one who speaks the words. Though it may go and come without harming anyone, the sticks and stones, I guess, is going to come back to him every time. A whip for the horse, a bridle for the ass, and a rod for the fool's back. Punishment. Sometimes it takes force, doesn't it? Have you seen force have to be used on someone who's foolish in order to get them to see? They don't get it until something bad happens. Life is a dream to that person, or again, they can say what they want. They really think that they're impressive. And you've heard it said before that if you want to know how impressive you really are, just stick your finger in a bucket of water and pull it back out and see what type of impression you leave. The fool really thinks he's impressive, really thinks he can leave an impression. But the only impression he's leaving is a negative one. And in order to be corrected, sometimes he's like an unruly horse, or a bridle for a donkey that is unruly. Won't mind his master. He hears you, you know he hears you, but he doesn't mind. Like children are the same way. I know you heard what I said, but they ignore. They pay no attention to the instruction. The next two verses are ones that are often have been misconstrued as a contradiction. But just to get from you guys, how are they not a contradiction?
Well, I think verse 4, I think a popular saying nowadays comes from verse 4, never argue with a fool, because somebody watching can't tell the difference.
That's true. Right.
That's where I see, like, that's what I'm reading, and answer not a fool according to his folly, or agree with him, or join in with his folly, or try to come and bring him out of his foolishness, because you want to be like him.
Exactly. And you've seen in the same boat, right? So how does verse 5 work in there? It says, don't answer a fool according to his folly, and then verse 5 says, do answer a fool according to his
He's
folly.
right,
Huh?
then he thinks he's right.
That's right. When you don't say something, right? So it's not a contradiction.
Right.
It's just, we have to use our wisdom, and we have to use discernment, and maybe a little prayer from time to time to know when to speak and when not to.
Well, I think it means here that you should allow God to answer that. I mean, there's an answer to a fool and his folly. It's not fleshly, foolish rhetoric back at him.
Yeah.
But when you give back to the fool an answer that is given by God,
Yeah.
now you've answered him, and he does look like the fool, and we know that that's exactly the way every time. If you can answer, and that's why it's so great to study the Word of God, and that's why, because it is an answer to those fools, so that you can just say, you don't have to argue, you don't have to do anything, just give that scripture
All right.
and move on. Let them ponder and let them go on from it. And it's amazing what it can do. I watched, and I think we went away from it, at Church of Christ, preachers one time with some other, and I've told that story before, where the Baptist and there was another Pentecostal, and all the preacher did that was there for the Church of Christ was just kept giving scriptures. He never put anything else extra in anything that he said. He just answered, thus saith the Lord.
I'm not sure, you're talking about Brother Elkins. I'm not sure he can say anything else but scriptures.
Well, see, and ain't that
That's all that
amazing?
comes out of that guy's mouth.
And it is an amazing thing to watch when somebody, it made those two guys who were learned
Yeah.
men, but this made them look foolish at every turn that they.
And that was a situation where you do answer a fool according to his folly. So, that's right. And heaven forbid we become like them, right? We wouldn't want the crowd to see us looking like they do, or look at those two arguing. You know, I felt that before, where I was, standing in the midst of, a certain group of people, or talking to a person, and maybe having an argument with him, thinking to myself, okay, these people are watching me, and I know what they think of him, so my arguing with him is going to put me in that same boat, so I'm out of here. I ain't gonna talk to him right now. You know what I'm saying?
It's exhausting when it's a daily thing.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I know we teach our children, don't get into the drama and all the things that they have growing up with many of the relationships they have. And we teach them, don't stoop to that level of getting
Right,
into the messiness of it. Rise above it.
You know,
And
they
I
teach.
don't mean him for the record, sorry. I'm talking about my boss.
I didn't mean that.
I'm not talking
You know, and we've got it in our own thing, lawyers are taught to stay on subject, don't let it push you off. And if you're arguing with a fool, next thing you know, you find this argument going everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
And the one thing, I went to the school board one time, talked to a lawyer friend of mine, and he said, stay on just that subject. If there's something else you need to talk about, put another time, stay on.
And the same is the case we're talking about the Bible, is to stay on that verse, don't let them carry you off to other context and everything else.
Yeah, and Brother Elkins, that's what they was trying to do. Well, on the second adverb of the third verb of the ninth noun here on this verse here.
Does it say it or not say it? I don't care about that.
Yeah, and he would just quote another verse.
So, just application there, right? Wisdom by the all-wise Solomon. He that sendeth a message by a hand of a fool cutteth off the feet and drinketh damage. The legs of the lame are not equal, so is the parable in the fool's mouth. Who are you taking your advice from? Who Who are we taking our advice from? Are we taking our advice from Brian Williams? You guys heard a little bit about him lately?
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that ridiculous?
Lion Brian.
I was telling Jennifer about it last night, unbelievable. You know, now they're making fun and saying, you know, he wrote Lou Gehrig's speech and, was,
Interviewed
Martin
me.
Luther's right-hand man and all that stuff, you know.
He was there covering the moon landing.
Yeah, terrible. And so who we taking our advice from? I mean, he's a fine-looking man, I guess, as far as men go. He talks with a nice voice, and he's very succinct. So do you trust him?
Never had.
You know? And so we have to be careful. Who do we take our advice from? Because when you get that knowledge from a fool, is it really knowledge? Is it really going to benefit you or not?
You always have to consider the source.
Yeah, absolutely.
With your own knowledge and understanding
Yeah.
and discernment.
That's absolutely right. And against this, measure it, right?
And sometimes it'll surprise you too.
Yeah.
Because you can learn something mind-blowing from somebody you never expect.
Sure, that's right.
Out of his foolishness. Because out of his foolishness, you sit there and you pick up, that ain't what it says, and you go on, you think, holy cow. Not only does it not say that.
Yeah, it says this pretty neat.
Yeah, it does.
So, mind where you get your advice from. As he that bindeth a stone in a sling, now this is probably my favorite verse in the whole thing. He is he that bindeth a stone in a sling, so is he that give honor to a fool. All right? The best thing I can come up with in modern day, since I don't use a sling to hunt, is a loaded gun. You know, some of these people, they have what they deem as knowledge and what they think and deem as the truth, and it's like a loaded gun, and how dangerous that is. You know, and
I've seen it.
yeah,
You've seen it firsthand.
yeah, how dangerous that is. And when you bind a stone into a sling, that's the first step, right? When you take that cartridge, put it into the gun, into the weapon, you have intent there. You're gonna fire it, right? You're gonna fire that weapon. Now, it may not be to kill or to maim, it could be to shoot a target or whatever. Back in those days, when he loaded that stone into a sling, you had intentions. You weren't just practicing loading it. You were gonna sling that thing. And so, he says, so is he that gives honor to a fool. Who are you patting on the back? Who are we bidding Godspeed? All right, you're loading guns you shouldn't be loading. You're giving Godspeed to those who are causing detriment to the Lord's people.
Because they're gonna go use it.
Absolutely. There's intent there. Once it's loaded, the stone's coming out. And it's gonna break glass, it's gonna kill, it's gonna put a dent in a giant's head, whatever. There's intent there. So this is one of my favorite verses because who are we bidding Godspeed? Are we bidding Godspeed to the fool?
You know, we have a fight today, and I know I've been in the middle of which is better, Fox or CBS or NBC or all those, and we have this thing, well, Fox has, got more. Well, I tell you what, no matter what, I see so much misinformation still come from Fox, and I still don't know their intent, and so to listen to it on any of them without really doing your homework is a fool's folly again, because they haven't got anything that is, and you see people, they will connect, and they will quote Fox News, and they will, and as, they're all truth, they're all, and it is amazing how men, whether you're looking at Rush Limbaugh or whoever, that we end up putting our trust in, and man, some of it that comes out there, and we say, well, they're just wrong on this point, and they're just a little wrong on this point, and they're pushing this point. Right now, Glenn Beck, I just can't hardly stomach, because as many things as he's right about.
Well, see, a lot of people are too lazy, and it gets into that here in a minute. Not a part of it. A lot of times we're too lazy to be the front runner, to do our own homework and to have our own belief system. And so what we have to do is we have to file in behind somebody who's got such wonderful rhetoric, whether it's Brian Williams or Glenn Beck or whoever it is. The only one that we should be filing in behind is Jesus the Christ.
Amen.
And when we file in behind him, then not only do you become a follower of the Christ, you become independent of the world. You don't become independent totally, but you become independent from the world, and that's what we're looking for. Following Glenn Beck or which I really like some of what he says, or Rush Limbaugh. I really love some of what he says, and a lot of Fox News. I really like watching Megyn Kelly. She's she's beautiful, and she's
Why do you like to watch Megan Kelly?
she's an ugly woman, but she's nice to watch. She says good things. But anyway, but none of them hold enough weight to follow in any way, shape, or form. I don't follow them. In fact, if I ever saw them in public, it should be my aim to get them to follow me. You understand what I mean by that? And I don't think they should follow me, but I'm like, as Paul in 1 Corinthians 11:1, be followers of me as I am of Christ. Megan, if you're not following Christ, Rush, if you're not following Christ, then follow me, because that's who I'm for. Okay, so be careful who we're lending our.
He is the truest example of a leader with the purest and best of intentions.
Yeah.
No agendas.
Yeah.
No nothing. He's not, you can be a smooth talker, Federal would. The current president is. So,
Yeah.
but they all have ill intentions. Jesus came to
And you don't know what they
laws.
are.
That's right.
Yeah, that's the
No
crazy
idea
thing.
what they are. He lays it right out of what he's all about, right there in the book.
Yeah.
I read something the other day that said, a true leader wants to create other leaders, not followers.
Yeah.
And a lot of these people you're talking about they want followers, they don't want you to do your own research, your own knowledge, they want you to follow them.
Absolutely.
Christ was the true leader.
That's a good
He wants
point.
to make other leaders.
A true leader understands that he's following anyway, right?
Yeah.
So that's a good point. Now, a true leader doesn't think he's the head honcho. He knows he's under at least one.
Yeah.
So that's a good point.
If Megyn Kelly or Shannon Bream or Kimberly Guilfoyle or, if doesn't have anything interesting to say, change the channel.
Boy, good grief.
Have a discussion.
Get in the car.
No, the rest of the guys said, yeah, those.
Yeah, the imagers are running
Yeah,
down.
really,
line
yeah.
there.
Keep us on point, Shane, keep us on point.
Okay. That's a fool's errand there. Okay.
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
Talking about the sportscast, the newscasters and the news and everything, like, why would we ever want to follow any of them anyways, or, because all they're bringing is the earthly wisdom that we're talking about
Right.
anyways. They're not feeding us anything spiritual anyways, And I know, we want to know what's going on in the world and everything, but sometimes we hold so much weight in that, and it's not even about, that's the earthly wisdom that they're talking about versus the hope that is in Jesus
Right.
Christ.
Well, there's a way that seems right unto a man, but the end thereof is the way of death. And that's the epitome of a fool's errand, right? So very good point.
And one that's following God and can apply that and then just look at, because we were talking about the fall of Jerusalem. These people had to test the air. The Christians had to know what was coming and pay close attention.
Yeah.
Because he gave them, if you see an army forming, time to get.
Yeah.
But he gave you all kinds of other things to look to prepare.
Right.
And that's what it was, to prepare and to move on. But to use that only and to not know where it came from is the error.
Right.
That's the problem.
Verse 9, as a thorn goeth into the hand of a drunkard, so is a parable in the mouth of fools. When the thorn goes in the hand of the drunkard, what happens? He don't much feel it, does he? It's not making any, he's not going like that quick, he's going, uh-oh, right? Parable in the mouth of a fool isn't gonna hold much weight anyway, right? It's not gonna cause a reaction